I wasn't looking for anything that day. I mean, honestly, I'd stopped looking for anything at all. It was December, 1884. Crawford's General Store in a town I won't name because, well, it doesn't matter anymore. I had my shopping list: flour, lamp oil, thread, the same list every week. I'd learned to keep my head down. You know, don't make eye contact. Don't invite questions. Don't feel. The store smelled like tobacco and old wood and something else I could never quite name. Loneliness. Maybe. Or just the particular scent of winter in a prairie town where everyone knows your shame. I was reaching for the flower when I saw it. Just there, tacked on the wall between a wanted poster and an advertisement for some ridiculous patent medicine that promised to cure everything from consumption to moral weakness. The paper was newer than the others. The ink still dark. Widower seeks mother for twin daughters. Age 2. Ranch 20 miles north. Write to David Patterson. General delivery. My hand stopped moving. Twins. That word, God. That word went through me like a knife made of ice and fire simultaneously. I couldn't breathe for a moment, couldn't move, just stood there staring at those 4 letters while the world tilted sideways. I would have named you Sarah and Emma. That's what I thought, right there in Crawford's store with Mrs. Henderson gossiping 3 feet away and the storekeeper adding up someone's account. I thought about the names I'd whispered in the dark during my 3rd month, when you were still real inside me, still possible, before the labor came too early, before the silence where crying should have been, before your father decided it was my fault, my hand. It just reached out. No permission from my brain. I pulled the pencil from behind Mr. Crawford's ear. He gave me a look, but didn't say anything, because everyone in town had learned not to speak to me unless necessary. And I copied the address on the back of my shopping list. David Patterson. General delivery. 20 miles north. I bought my flour, paid with coins I'd earned doing piecework for the seamstress, stitching other women's wedding dresses and christening gowns. The lamp oil felt heavier than usual walking home. Or maybe that was just me, carrying the weight of that address burning in my pocket. The town square had a fountain dried up for winter, frozen solid. I passed it every day, never really saw it anymore. But that day, I stopped and looked at it. Really looked. Everything frozen. Everything stopped. Everything waiting. That was me too. Wasn't it frozen since last winter? Since the midwife's face? Since the silence? Since the divorce papers served 3 months after I'd buried my heart, back in my rented room above the seamstress shop? I sat at my writing desk, stared at that address. The paper was wrinkled from being clutched in my hand the whole walk home. I told myself I was just curious. I told myself I'd never actually write, but my hand was already reaching for fresh paper, and some frozen part of me deep inside, where I'd locked everything away, was beginning to crack. Look, I'm not proud of how many versions I wrote. 17. I counted them after, when I was burning them one by one in my little stove. 17 attempts to explain the unexplainable, to justify the unjustifiable. The first ones were too desperate. Please. I'll do anything. I need this. I burned those fast. Some were too cold, too formal. Dear Sir, I am writing in response to your advertisement regarding employment as a domestic caretaker for your minor children. As if love was a business transaction. As if you could apply for motherhood like you'd apply for a position at a dry goods store. Those burned too. 3 days. That's how long I spent writing and burning. Writing and burning. The seamstress downstairs asked if I was ill because I hadn't come down for meals. I told her I was fine. I was always fine. Fine is what you say when broken isn't an acceptable answer in polite society. On the third night, I stopped trying to be anything other than honest. I wrote, I lost my twins last year in childbirth. My hand shook so hard I had to stop, had to breathe, had to decide if I was really going to do this. My husband blamed me, divorced me, left me with nothing but the knowledge that I had loved 2 children I never got to hold. The pen bled a little there. Tears on paper will do that. If you can trust someone broken, I will love your daughters as my own. I know grief. I know what it means to fail and keep going. I know that love is worth the risk of loss. If you're willing to take a chance on someone who understands both, I will come. I signed it, Grace Sullivan, the name I'd kept even though he'd taken everything else. 4 a.m. I walked to the post office before dawn, before courage failed, before sense returned. The streets were that particular kind of empty that only happens in the blue hour before sunrise. You know, when the world is holding its breath between night and day, the post office slot it made this sound, this final, metallic sound when the letter dropped through. No taking it back. No changing your mind. Gone. I walked home in the pre-dawn light, and I swear I felt something shift, like the ice around my heart had developed a crack. Not melting, not yet, but possible. The possibility of melting. Back in my room, I looked around, really looked for the first time in months. Dishes in the basin, stockings with holes I hadn't mended, dust on the windowsill thick enough to write your name in. Grief makes you careless about yourself. But that morning, that strange, suspended morning after I'd mailed a letter that might change everything or might change nothing, I washed the dishes, mended the stockings, opened the curtains, as if I might need to be ready, as if someone might actually answer, as if my frozen life might thaw. 2 weeks. I'm not going to lie, I spent those 2 weeks convincing myself he wouldn't respond. I mean, why would he? I'd told him the truth that I was broken, that I'd failed, that I was damaged goods in a society that valued women primarily for their ability to produce healthy children. 50 other women probably wrote to him. Younger women, prettier women, women whose bodies hadn't betrayed them, whose husbands hadn't left them, whose arms weren't empty. So, when the letter came, I almost didn't open it. The postmaster handed it to me with this look, like he knew, like the whole damn town knew that pathetic Grace Sullivan had written to some widower rancher begging for a position as a mother to his children because she couldn't keep her own alive. I walked 3 blocks before I opened it. sat on a bench near the frozen fountain. My hands shaking so hard, I almost tore the envelope. His handwriting was careful, masculine, steady. Your letter made me weep. I had to stop reading, had to breathe, had to press my hand against my mouth to keep from making a sound. I have rejected 50 applicants, pretty women seeking security, educated women seeking adventure, capable women seeking employment. None of them understood. But you understand. Come for 2 weeks. If it doesn't suit, I will pay your return passage and a month's wages for the attempt. If it does, we can discuss the future. David Patterson. The Stagecoach North left 3 days later. I packed everything I owned in a single carpet bag. It didn't take long. When your husband divorces you and you're living on piecework wages, well, you learn to live small. The journey was, God, it was endless. Hours in a rocking stagecoach with 2 other passengers who didn't speak to me. The winter landscape rolled past all white and gray and brown. The prairie in its dormant season, waiting, everything waiting. I kept thinking, what am I doing? This is insane. I'm going to a stranger's ranch to audition as a mother to children I've never met because I lost my own, and I'm so hollow inside I can't remember what it feels like to be whole. But I also thought, what else am I doing with this hollow life? The ranch appeared as the sun was setting. Modest a house? A barn? Some outbuildings? But the windows were clean. I noticed that immediately. Clean windows in winter take effort. Take care. The stagecoach stopped. I climbed down, my carpet bag heavy in my hand. And then he was there. David Patterson, tall, maybe 6 feet, lean the way men get when they work hard and forget to eat enough. Weathered face, maybe 35. Dark hair going gray at the temples. But his eyes were the same as mine. I don't mean the color. I mean the look, the weight, the knowledge of what it costs to love someone and lose them and somehow keep breathing anyway. We stood there looking at each other for a long moment. 2 people wearing grief like an old coat, recognizing the same cut and fabric. Thank you for coming, he said. His voice cracked slightly. Thank you for trusting me, I said. Neither of us knew what else to say. The moment was awkward and human and so real. He picked up my bag, not presumptuous, just practical, and led me inside. The house smelled like wood smoke and coffee and something baking. Bread. Maybe. The floors were swept. The curtains were slightly crooked but clean. A man doing his best alone. The girls are napping, he said quietly. I'll show you your room. Your room. Not the room. Your room. As if it might already be mine. As if I might stay. He showed me a small bedroom. Plain a bed. A dresser. A window looking west toward where the sun was bleeding orange and pink across the winter sky. It's perfect, I whispered, and I realized I meant it. I was unpacking when I heard them. Small feet, soft voices, the particular shuffle and whisper sound of children who are supposed to be napping but have decided the adventure of a stranger in the house is worth the risk of adult disapproval. I turned around. 2 faces, identical, peering around the doorframe like curious woodland creatures deciding if I was safe. Brown curls, enormous eyes, their father's eyes. Maybe 2 years old. Like the advertisement said, but small for their age. Delicate, precious. They stared at me. I froze. My heart. God. My heart was hammering so hard I thought they might hear it. They're real. They're alive. They're so small. Emma. I'd learn later which was which toddles forward first. Rose followed half a step behind. The cautious twin. Emma reached up with both arms, her little hands opening and closing. "Mama," she said. That word, that impossible, beautiful, devastating word. My knees gave out. I sat down hard on the bed because standing wasn't possible anymore. And Emma climbed right into my lap like she'd been doing it her whole life. Rose watched for 3 seconds and then decided it was safe. Climbing up to, I held them. And I cried. First time in a year, I'd cried real tears. Not the empty kind, but the kind that come from somewhere so deep you didn't know it still existed. David was in the doorway. I looked up at him through my tears, and his eyes were wet too. "How do they know?" I whispered. "How do children always know real love?" He shook his head, couldn't speak. The week that followed was everything I'd lost and everything I'd thought I'd never have. Breakfast. Washing small faces that turned away from the cloth. Combing tangles out of soft curls while they squirmed. Mending tiny dresses with tinier stitches. Reading picture books with more pictures than words. Their warm weight against my sides. Learning them. Rose liked her eggs scrambled. Not fried. Emma wouldn't wear the blue dress, only the yellow one. They both reached for my hand automatically when we walked to the chicken coop. Rose was cautious. Thoughtful. Emma was bold. Laughing. I cataloged every detail with desperate attention, as if I might be tested, as if this might end and I'd need to remember every second. The evenings were different, after the girls went to sleep. David and I maintained careful distance. We'd sit in the main room, me mending, him reading the newspaper that came once a week from town. We'd talk about safe things, weather, the chicken's production, whether we needed more firewood. Never the things that mattered. Never. I lost my wife giving birth to them, and I'm terrified of ever loving anyone again. Never. I lost my children before they could draw breath, and I don't know if I deserve these daughters or if I'm stealing love that belongs to someone else. But I'd catch him watching me sometimes, when I was reading to the girls or braiding their hair or just being their mother, and his expression was wonder, maybe, or grief, or hope. Maybe all three. Each night I tucked them in, smoothed their curls, whispered stories about brave princesses and kind horses and gardens that bloomed even in winter. And each night I thought, one more day, please. Just let me have one more day before this ends. As if love operated on borrowed time. As if joy required permission I hadn't earned. 1 week in, Emma had thrown the tantrum to end all tantrums at bedtime, something about wanting the wooden horse to sleep with her, not the rag doll. And no amount of reasoning could penetrate toddler logic. It took 45 minutes to get her settled. I was exhausted. Sat in the front room in the dark because lighting a lamp felt like too much effort. The hearth was cold. David had been keeping the fire going in the kitchen stove because that's where we spent most of our time. And wood costs labor. And, why heat a room you're not using? Practical. Everything about this life was practical. I was shivering slightly when he came in. He didn't say anything, just looked at me sitting there in my shawl. Then at the cold hearth. Then back at me. Then he built a fire, methodical, kindling. Larger pieces. A match struck against stone. The smell of pine catching. The particular sound of new flames finding purchase. We sat there in silence as the fire grew, orange light dancing across the worn floorboards, warmth slowly pushing back the cold. "Can I ask about your husband?" David said finally. My whole body tensed. But then I decided, truth or nothing. "What do you want to know?" "Why he left." I laughed. No humor in it. "Because I failed at the one thing women are supposed to do. Bear healthy children. Continue the family line. Justify his investment in marriage." David's jaw tightened. I kept talking. Couldn't stop now that I'd started. The pregnancy was difficult from the start. The midwife worried. "Twins," she said, "were always risky. Especially." I had to stop. Breathe. "Especially for someone small like me. The labor came early. Too early. They were perfect. So small, but perfect." "Both?" he asked quietly. "Both." Silent. The midwife tried. God. She tried. But some things you can't fix. You can only survive. The fire crackled. My husband's face, when the doctor said they were gone, I can still see it. Shock. Then grief. Then something harder. Colder. He started sleeping in the spare room. Stopped talking to me except when necessary. 3 months after we buried them, he served me divorce papers. What reason did he give? Barrenness. That was the legal term. He told the judge I was defective, unable to fulfill my marital duties. The judge granted it without question because, well, wasn't he right? No. David's voice was hard. He was wrong. I looked at him. My wife died giving them life, he said. Margaret, that was her name. She held them for maybe 10 minutes before she started bleeding. Couldn't stop it. The doctor tried everything. I held her hand, and she looked at the twins and smiled and said, "They're beautiful." And then he couldn't finish. We sat there, two people drowning in separate griefs that somehow looked the same. "Should I blame the girls?" he asked. "Should they blame themselves when they're old enough to understand?" "No," I whispered. "Then how can you blame yourself, Grace?" We didn't fail. We just loved people we couldn't save. That's not failure. That's just being human. Something in my chest cracked. That ice I'd been carrying around it shifted. I'm afraid, he said, of loving again, of trusting my heart to someone and then losing. He shook his head. I can't do it again. I can't. I know, I said. I'm afraid too, of caring for your daughters and then having to leave, of opening that door again and finding out that loss is all that waits on the other side. Then we're both cowards, or both brave enough to try anyway. He looked at me then, really looked. The firelight caught in his eyes. Our hands didn't touch, but something else did, something deeper than hands. The fire warmed the room. Neither of us moved closer, but neither moved away. And I realized thawing hurts. The return of feeling always does. But numbness isn't safety. It's just another kind of death. And I'd been dead long enough. Day 10. I woke to crying. Not the normal wake-up fussing. Desperate crying. The kind that triggers every maternal instinct even before your mind catches up. Emma. I ran to their room in my nightgown. No slippers. No robe. Just running. She was burning. I picked her up, and her whole little body was radiating heat like a stove. Her cheeks were flushed dark red. Her eyes glassy. Rose was sitting up in her bed, silent, watching with enormous frightened eyes. David, I called out, trying to keep my voice calm and failing completely. He appeared in seconds, pulling on his shirt. She's burning up, I said. My hands were already shaking. We need cool water, cloths. He was already moving. The day that followed was endless, endless. I sponged Emma's forehead, her little wrists, her feet. The fever would drop slightly, and I'd feel this surge of hope it's breaking. Thank God. It's breaking, and then it would spike again, and Emma would whimper, and that whimper went through me like knives. David hovered, helpless. Men always are in these moments. Should I ride for the doctor? It's 20 miles, but I could. Not yet. I heard myself say, voice tight, controlled. We'll watch her. It might just be, we'll watch her. But inside I was screaming, not again. Please, God, not again. I can't do this again. I can't hold another child and feel them slip away and survive it. I can't. Rose wouldn't leave my side. She pressed against my leg. Silent, sensing the terror in the air. Every fevered whimper from Emma dragged me back. The midwife's face, the silence where crying should have been. The absolute powerlessness of loving something so small and so fragile. Love isn't enough to keep children safe. I learned that last year. Why did I think this time would be different by evening? Emma seemed better, sleeping more peacefully. Her skin less hot. David sagged with relief. smiled at me with exhausted gratitude. But I couldn't relax. I stood at the window after David fell asleep in the chair by Emma's bed, watched snow begin to fall, fat flakes catching the moonlight, and some terrible voice inside me whispered, "Leave now. Leave before you love them so much that losing them destroys what's left of you." The lie we tell ourselves when we're already drowning. 3 a.m. Emma's fever had broken. Really broken this time. She was sleeping peacefully, color returning, breathing easy. Just a childhood illness. Nothing serious. She'd wake up cranky and demanding breakfast, and everything would be fine. Fine. So why was I pulling my carpet bag from under the bed? Why was I packing methodically dress? Bare stockings. The few belongings I'd brought while that old numbness descended like an old familiar coat, I moved through the dark house like a ghost. Quiet. Careful. Don't wake them. Just go. Back to the seamstress shop. Back to piecework and the rented room. Back to the frozen fountain and the life you understood. Safe. Dead. But safe. I was at the door, bag in hand. Freedom? Just a door opening away. And then I saw them. Small handprints on the window glass. Emma and Rose's fingerprints from yesterday, when they'd pressed against the glass to watch the snow fall. Tiny. Perfect. Already fading, but still there. I set down my bag, stood there shaking, then walked to the girls' bedroom and stood in the doorway watching them sleep. Emma's chest rising and falling. Rose's arm flung over her head. Alive, breathing, real. And I finally let myself remember my lost twins fully. Not pushing the memory away, not locking it up, not pretending, feeling it. The weight I never got to hold, the names I chose, the future I'd imagined, the love that had nowhere to go. Sarah, Emma. "I'm so sorry," I whispered to them, to my ghosts. "I'm so sorry I couldn't save you." And then something shifted. What if they hadn't been taken away? What if they'd been given? What if losing them had taught me how precious this was? How valuable? How worth protecting? What if you sent me here? What if you made me a mother before I ever got to be one? And these children, these beautiful, living, breathing children are the daughters I get to raise because you taught me how to love them. I thought about David's words. We didn't fail. We just loved people we couldn't save. Maybe that was true. Maybe love doesn't require success to be real. I went back to my room, unpacked my bag in the dark, hung my dress back on the peg, and then I sat on the bed and cried. Really cried. Fully cried. The grief I'd been holding for a year. Healing isn't forgetting. It's letting the wound close so you can use your hands again. I cried until my throat was raw. For the children I'd lost. For the woman I'd been. For the year I'd spent frozen. And somewhere in that grief, I found something unexpected. Gratitude.
My lost twins had taught me the value of this love, and I wouldn't dishonor them by refusing it.
Dawn came soft. I was already up, making breakfast. When Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway, pale but steady, grinning, hungry, she announced. I laughed, actually laughed, scooped her up and held her close. Of course you are. Sweet girl. Rose followed, then David. Hair disheveled, looking relieved and exhausted simultaneously. We made breakfast together. Well, I made it while Emma climbed into my lap and Rose demanded to help stir the porridge, and David watched us with this expression I couldn't quite read. After breakfast, he pulled me aside. His voice was quiet. Last night I woke up. Your door was open. I saw. Your bag was out. I met his eyes. If you need to leave, he continued. Understand. The fever, the fear, all of it. I understand if it's too much. I need to stay, I said. He blinked. Last night, I was terrified. I told him. My voice was steady now, clear. Emma's fever brought back everything I'd lost. Every helpless moment, every failure. I almost ran. I packed my bag and I stood at the door ready to protect myself from ever feeling that pain again. Grace. But David, I realized something. I took a breath. Your daughters deserve a mother who understands that fear and loves them anyway. Someone who knows what loss costs and chooses love regardless. And you deserve someone who knows your grief isn't weakness. It's proof you love deeply. His eyes were wet. I'm choosing this, I said. And this was my moment, my choice, my active decision. I'm choosing to be their mother, not because I'm replacing my lost children, but because they taught me how. They made me capable of this love. I'm choosing to risk my heart again, because the alternative is staying frozen forever. And I'm choosing you too. If you'll have me, not as a hired caretaker, as a partner, someone who understands. David's throat worked. I was going to ask you, he said, at the end of 2 weeks, if you'd marry me, build this family together, then ask me now. Grace Sullivan. Yes, I interrupted, smiled through tears. Yes, I will. Yes. Emma tugged my skirt. Mama, stay. I lifted her, held her close, kissed her curls. Mama stays, I whispered. Forever. Rose crashed into us, wrapping her arms around my legs. David put his hand on my shoulder, and I understood. Finally, I wasn't whole because someone completed me. I was whole because I'd chosen to complete myself through loving them. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's loving anyway. Spring. 3 months married now. I'm writing this in my journal by the hearth, the one David lights every morning without fail, the one that stays warm all day.
the one that mirrors something inside me that I thought had gone cold forever. So much has changed. Emma and Rose call me Mama without hesitation. Sometimes I still catch my breath when I hear it. But now it's joy instead of pain. David reaches for my hand naturally now at the table, walking to the barn. In the evening, when we sit by the fire, this place feels like home. My garden planted, my curtains hung straight, my life built here. But I also tend the garden plot behind the house where I planted 2 rose bushes. Sarah, Emma, the names I chose. I talk to them sometimes. My lost children. Tell them about their sisters. Rose has your father's stubbornness, I whisper. Emma has my laugh. I think you'd love them. I hope. I hope you know I haven't forgotten you. David found me there yesterday evening. Didn't ask questions. Just stood beside me. Is it strange, I asked him, that I honor them while loving these daughters? I think, he said slowly, it's proof that the heart doesn't divide love. It multiplies it. That night, we sat at dinner, the 4 of us. David carved the ham. Emma tried to use her fork properly and failed spectacularly. Rose snuck food to the dog under the table. Thinking we couldn't see, ordinary, beautiful, real. And I thought about the woman I was a year ago, frozen, numb, convinced that love had used up all its chances with me. I was wrong. Look, I learned something in that year of hollow grief. Fear isn't the opposite of love. Indifference is. And I could never, never be indifferent to these children, to this man, to this life we're building from broken pieces. We're all scarred here. David has scars. I have scars. Even the girls will have scars someday, because that's what it means to be human. But scars mean you survived. And sometimes survival is the first step toward joy. That night, I sat with both girls in my lap, David's hand on my shoulder, reading from a picture book by firelight. Outside, the 2 rose bushes bloomed in moonlight. Perfect. Peaceful. I whispered too soft for anyone but ghosts to hear. Thank you for teaching me how to love them. You made me a mother before I ever became one. The hearth stayed warm. The family remained whole. And love, it turned out, wasn't something you lost capacity for. It was something that grew every time you were brave enough to risk it again. Every single time. The end.